How do you say your name? Gotham?
Yeah, Gautam.
Gotham. Okay, not
Yeah,
Gotham. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
So it's got nothing to do with Batman.
No, it has everything to do with the Gautama the Buddha. It's a name.
Aha! Okay, I've got a Buddha on my hands and didn't know it. Okay.
It's the same. It's the same. Because in Pali they say Gautama, but the Sanskrit word is Gautama. It's Go.
Okay. Well, I guess everybody should learn how to spell their own name. That's excellent. And what does Shiva Nivas mean?
Yeah, that's my the dad's name. That's my father's name. Srinivas.
Srinivas.
Yeah,
Now that
Srinivas. Yeah.
word that I've heard Nivas before. What
hmm
does that mean?
Srinivas is actually God's name. God, Lord Balaji. You might have heard the another name for Lord Balaji. The, there's a temple called Tirupati. So Shri is the same Shri that you've heard, like the Siri,
Yes.
Siri Manga, Siri. That's the same Shri, Siri. Nivas means a place, a dwelling, something like that.
Okay.
Right.
Perhaps in that regard, then Sri and this could be used in the word holy in the sense of a holy place,
Yeah, yeah, could be. Yeah.
a high class.
hmm
Okay. Um, so as we were turning the recorder on, you were saying that when your formal sitting practice falls away, then the benefit of it slowly deteriorates, and you can see that already.
yes.
Okay,
I do.
that's really, really good advice, because it's now been, what, about a month since you came out of the Goenka retreat. So you
Mhm.
can kind of think of that as the high point of coming out. And since then,
Yeah,
it's been kind of dwindling down.
that's
Okay.
right.
Goenka, um, I know that it's because of his training with Hubei Ken and the situation that was in Burma at the time, but
Mhm.
that Goenka actually has a fairly narrow focus,
Mhm.
and that focus actually excludes much of the actual practice of the Dhamma. And
Mhm.
that in the regard that we're talking about here, many of the retreats in America, or excuse me, in Thailand at least, they will incorporate walking meditation. They do that also in Burma, to where with the Mahasi, excuse me,
Correct.
with the Goenka, they don't do that. It's all sitting.
Yeah.
Now, what walking meditation is then is that it is learning how to do meditation on the move.
Right.
Or another way of doing it, or thinking about it, is there's more to the practice than just sitting.
Correct.
And so today, that's what I would like to help you with, to start introducing new ways to build sati throughout
Sure.
the day rather than relying upon it as a residual from your sitting meditation.
Right.
That in fact, one of the ways of looking at it is we do the sitting meditation only so that we can get seclusion, because
Mhm.
that's the easiest way to learn how to um, develop the skill of sati in the beginning. But
Right.
we want to be able to remember, or to have sati come up when we need it, not
Mhm.
just when we're sitting.
Right. Yeah.
That in fact, that's one of the things that's kind of a joke about good advice. You can find good advice in many, many different places.
Right.
Sometimes you can find good advice at the Wat or the temple. Sometimes you can find good advice from a doctor or a lawyer. But the
Right.
problem with advice for most people is that they forget to apply that advice at just the right time.
Right.
For instance, when the lawyer advises his client, don't lie to the police,
Mhm.
and yet in the wrong moment he forgets. All
Right.
right, okay. It doesn't really matter whether he's got a daily meditation practice or not, now does it? When he so so we need a little bit more. We
Mm-hmm.
need to start you actually understanding that we get started
Mm-hmm.
by practicing in seclusion. And when I mean get started, I'm not talking about one time get started, but
Mm-hmm.
every time we raise to a new level in our meditation.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, by the time that we get first jhana, we're not expected then to immediately start walking around in first jhana, but
Right.
that eventually, as we're progressing then into the second jhana in our sitting meditation, we can begin to experiment with walking around in first jhana.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the way that we begin to look at it is that the sitting meditation is a harbinger or a forerunner or a trailblazer.
Right.
Okay, so you know the quality of trailblazing. They had them in America when you have a scout, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have the army, and the
Right.
scout goes here, there, and yon, and says, "Okay, that's the way to go." Okay, so this is actually in that same regard of the distinction between the sitting meditation and walking around and living our lives.
Right.
And that it's also worthwhile saying that many students get the idea that meditation has its own quality, or that I meditate so that I can become a better meditator, which means now I can meditate even better than before. But that's only a prelude to meditate even more. Okay, and then
Yeah.
they wind up in Burma 16 hours a day, even sleeping, sitting up all night. I've seen them. I've actually been around guys like that, but you're
Right.
not expecting to live your life that there. You're not expecting to go in and start a sitting practice that becomes your whole life. No, but you want to use that
Mm-hmm.
so that you can have some value throughout your daily life. Okay, so
Right.
that's the exact way now that we're going to look at it is that just as they would say in the Goenka retreat, I don't know if they talked to you about this, but behind the scenes with the guys who are doing the volunteer work and all of that, the joke is that on day one, the new student can see the mind wandering away 4, 5, or 6 times in an hour, and they think about it being a monkey mind. Oh, I can't, there it goes again. Okay. But the problem with the new student is there it goes again. It's gone, and it stays gone for a long time because their sati is not good. By day 6, they're catching the mind wandering away 30 or 40 times in the hour. And now it's, oh man, now it's really a monkey mind. Why? Because that's all I'm seeing is a monkey mind. But that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, begin to see that as good. So what we're now looking at is the possibility of let's up the frequency of the waking up.
Right.
When Goenka says never mind, start again, that never mind is actually sati. That's the point of sati, of waking up and
Right.
recognizing that you're not in this present moment.
Right.
You're not there to take good advice.
Right.
And so sati is that excellent quality of waking up and knowing what's going on right now. And that's also associated with step 9 of anapanasati in the sense of experiencing the mind. Now that we've
Okay.
been practicing doing that on the cushion or in isolation, now we need to start practicing that throughout the day by giving it some new tools,
Mm-hmm.
some new anchors, some new events. When we were sitting in meditation, it was kind of a dedication that every time I can remember, I'm going to do that. We have that quality, but while we're walking around during the day, there's a number of things that we can sort of write down and keep on a short list. And every time this, that, or the other thing happens, bango, that's an invitation to practice. So,
Right.
so that's how this method works.
Mm-hmm.
This is, in fact, exactly how uh, you would expect meditation cell phone apps to operate. Is their job is to give a
Okay.
thing or a ting or whatever to let the student have a possibility of hearing that and say, "Oh yeah, that's my cue." That's my trigger, or there's my anchor. Okay, whatever the terminology we use to bring it back. So
Yeah.
one of the things then that I will do with students is talk about sitting down in a chair, because that's actually quite significant. Sitting
Okay.
every time that you sit down in a chair means
Mm-hmm.
then that you're taking a load off your mind. You're taking a load off the body. That you're sitting down to relax. Okay? So
Okay.
let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do a full job of sitting down and going right in down Anapanasati with that big deep breath and relax and be here in the present moment for one,
Mm-hmm.
two, or three breaths. So let us say that you just walked into the office or walked through the office and you got to your cubicle or whatever it is and you sit down in your chair. Now every time that you do, instead of sitting down and putting your hands on the keyboard, you're going to sit down and put your mental hands together and begin to say, okay, now it's the time to practice Anapanasati.
Right.
Taking about 30 seconds, maybe a minute, is all that's necessary to bring sati back. Now, how many
Right.
times do you sit down in a chair a day? Some students say 20, 30 times. So that gives you now 60 times with a tool to wake up during
Yeah.
the day.
That's nice perspective.
Uh-huh. 30 times. Um, the second quality then is not just sitting down, but standing up
Mhm.
and walking. Okay, almost all the time that a person gets out of a chair and starts walking, that act is proof positive that they want something.
Correct.
They're in a state of desire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to interrupt that just a little bit here by making an intermediate gesture, and that intermediate is we don't go from sitting to walking, we go from sitting to standing and
Mm-hmm.
stop and
Okay.
stand and then ask one question: why did I stand up?
Mm-hmm.
I was perfectly comfortable in that chair, and here I have gone and messed it all up because I want something. What is
Yeah.
it that could possibly be so important that I actually have to get off my butt for it?
Mm-hmm.
When you start looking at things like that, you can begin to recognize, oh, I'm beginning to see what the mind is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so now we got about 60 times a day that we can do this. One is to full blown go into, ah, finally at home at last. Oh, this is so nice state of mind. Plus, whenever we get up, we can say, wait a minute, what is this? Why am I getting up? Where am I going? What's all of this about? Okay,
Right.
because it might be legitimate. Who's known? We're not making any judgments about it. We're merely wanting to see what's happening, to see what's going on.
Right.
Okay. Now, many students report that they are slow at getting this started.
Mm-hmm.
That it's slow when they want something, they get up and they go for it, and have to, after they made 5 or 10 steps, that's when they'll remember
Right.
that, hey, wait a minute, I was practicing an exercise that I was going to stand. Okay, so the thing to do right then, not go back to the chair, but to stand right then when sati does come and
Right.
say, okay, what's this all about? Let's
Mm-hmm.
do an investigation here. Why did I get out of the chair? And what was it that I wanted so badly that it grabbed me 10 steps before I recognized that I wanted something and I'd gotten out of the chair?
Right.
Okay. And if you keep practicing this over and over and over again as you're getting up, you'll begin to
Mm-hmm.
also see that subtleties going on even while you're still sitting in the chair without getting up. And so this is a good door to the mind. Is
Right.
every time that you get up, why did you get up? What's the point? What's the
Okay.
purpose of doing this? This is dangerous stuff, you know. I was perfectly comfortable sitting there in the chair, and now all of a sudden I want something. Mm. So this is in fact going right at it, and to the point of paticca samuppada, we're actually now beginning to take a place on the pulse of it.
Right.
That's a little bit earlier than people normally do. Normally, what we're doing at this point is that we're not looking at the full blown clinging, but we're
Mm-hmm.
now looking at merely the grasping.
Mm-hmm.
And we eventually start looking at it a little bit earlier than that and see that, oh, actually, the reason I got up is because I did want something, but there was something underlying that want, and that was a feeling.
Okay.
For instance, the feeling of dryness in the throat will give us the thought of wanting to go to the soda fountain or to the vending machine or to the Wally,
Right.
the tea Wally, but whatever it is, let's figure out what's going on. Why did I stand up? Where am I going to go? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because that begins to really bring sati to the fore.
Right.
And so don't give yourself a hard time when you walk right off and remember it later, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the way we get it started.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, after maybe about a week or so of this, and it's
Mm-hmm.
actually a good practice to add from now on,
Okay.
so that you keep doing this. Every time you stand up, we're taking a moment to wake up.
Right.
Not a full minute, just a mind moment.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, or 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So my
go ahead.
yeah, the difference that I'm noticing is that the number of times that I'm reminded is reducing when I don't do the sitting practice. So I'm reminded to be aware much less number of times. So in a way, I start believing that okay, I should sit more, I should sit more, practice more. So that kind of frustration creeps in, you know.
But this is a practice
Right.
that what we're talking about today. It is in fact not just it's not a substitute for the sitting practice, but it's
Mhm.
actually an addition to or step two after step one of the sitting practice is merely to get you in gear so that you can begin to wake up more and more often throughout the day
Right.
and to come to be here now.
Mhm.
Now, in this standing up process, I'm not even requiring for you to come into a full blown be here now kind of situation. We do that on sitting down.
Okay.
On the standing up, we're only going to merely note what the
Mhm.
mind was doing that got me to stand up. Was I standing up consciously, or did I stand up absent-mindedly?
Right.
Okay. Um, an example of that is after you've been practicing this for a while,
Mhm.
and you're sitting there at your desk or whatever, and all of a sudden you hear a huge fire alarm going off, and people start standing up and running away from their desk. Okay.
Mhm.
It would be quite natural for you to stand up and run away from the desk because at that point you know why you're getting up and, and leaving. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But often you'll find many times that uh, this actually happens to people on a regular occasion. They'll walk into the kitchen and then say, "Why did I come in here?"
True.
And then to justify the fact that they're in there, they'll invent something to some reason for them to go into that may not, in fact, been the original reason. So this is beginning to wake the mind up as to why we're doing stuff. And so it's a very, very good exercise. But on the other hand, the sitting down, the sitting down has to do with this is going to take a little bit longer. It's going to take more than just one mind moment to figure out what it is, or let us say to sit, stand, walk, rather than sit, walk.
Okay.
That one moment to stand and say, okay, bathroom, or um, going to the boss or whatever it is that's happening, we make note of it. But when we're sitting down, we're actually going to do it with that kind of um, attitude of a complete sigh of relief. That
Right.
literally, when we sit down, by taking a load off the feet, we're also going to take a moment to take the load off of our mind. Whatever the mind was thinking about, never mind, start again. This is
Right.
the start again moment for Anapanasati, for Goenka. So we
Right.
take a deep, full breath, and we be here now to the point of becoming satisfied with this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can turn to the computer or open our eyes and turn to the computer and just beat the crap out of it. We're good to go right now. We've got our
Right.
minds set up.
Right.
So this will help that
Mm-hmm.
question that you have of and begin to see then the relationship, because practicing this throughout the day, when you do sit, you
Mm-hmm.
begin to get better at sitting.
Mm-hmm.
This will help your sitting meditation also,
Okay.
so that you can go deeper. But if you
Mm-hmm.
only practice it once a day, then this sitting down means now you're practicing it not for a long time, but 20, 30, 40 times a day you're practicing it. So now when you sit down, it's much easier to come to a state of complete satisfaction within a couple of breaths,
Mm-hmm.
within one side. Just all we have to do is remember, but we need to practice it over and over and over again. But
Mm-hmm.
by practicing this way with this anchor of the chair, um, really starts to grind that habit pattern in. We want to make a new way of living.
Right.
And that we also have this thing of confidence that we want. And every time that we do this, we'll
Mm-hmm.
feel confident that I can do it next time,
Right.
over and over again, so that we get good at it. We become skilled,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can handle,
Right.
mentally handle whatever comes up. You're the lion now, you're the emperor. So
Right.
every time you sit down, you come to the state of the way that an emperor would sit down in a chair.
Mm.
So this is the way of practicing over and over and over again that has these four qualities of right view, right uh, sati, using these anchors, then right effort. That it does
Mm-hmm.
take some effort, because normally when we come to the desk to sit down at the computer, we're already in a hurry. When we got to the computer, when we got to the desk, we were already thinking about what we were doing on the computer. So now we're
Mm-hmm.
sitting down, we're going to throw that stuff out, and we're going to be here in this present moment.
Right.
And so now we can go to the computer later and do it with a clean mind.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a way of beginning to practice so that you're now developing sati throughout the day.
All right.
And then the other one more would be whenever you're out walking, for instance, you got out of your chair, going through a door, opening a door, especially opening a door that has a key to it, but just opening or unlatching a
Mm-hmm.
door and walking through it has that same quality of asking yourself the question, why am I here? Why am I opening this door? What's wrong with being on this side of the door? What's so
Mm-hmm.
much better about being on the other side of the door that I'm going to take the effort to open the darn thing?
Right. Got
And
it.
so this is a way of coming back to this present moment over and over and over again by using
Mm-hmm.
these handy things. Now, I've also told students in the past to use a cell phone with a timer to it, or maybe even one of these apps. But
Right.
students have pointed out that, oh no, Western mindset now is way too attached to these cell phones. that it's
Yeah.
better not to include the cell phone as part of this meditation practice because it's not necessary. We got plenty of anchors.
But I would see that it's anyway in any way cell phones are included in daily life, so it's better we use it for the better.
Yes, that's absolutely a way of looking at it. And that one of the ways of it being useful is to also make the mental note of, well, yeah, but now I don't need it.
Right.
Now I don't need it.
Doesn't mean it. Right.
Um, that this is actually another way of looking at it, as the cell phone is very much like our feelings. We are on the cell phone because we feel a certain way. We'll feel we'll miss something or whatever like that. So we kind of substitute the cell phone for a pacifier or trying to give us the good feelings that we want by
Right.
pacifying the fear. And that from time to time, taking the time to say, I don't need the cell phone now.
Mm.
Now is the
I
time to
can
do it
be,
on my own.
yeah, I can be satisfied without the cell phone too.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're getting at. Exactly so.
Yeah.
So that we're making a whole lot more wise choice. Excuse me, wise choices more often.
Right.
But we have to, in order to make wise choices, we have to be awake.
Hmm.
The wisdom doesn't come to the guy who's not watching what's going on. You got to watch what's happening. And so that's why we want to develop this skill of sati.
Right.
Um, as far as ancient teachers in the time of the Buddha, I don't know of any other teacher that put
Mhm.
so much emphasis on sati the way that Buddha did,
Yeah.
Gautama, or Gautam. But the the first jhana that he was practicing when he was under
Mhm.
the rose apple tree,
Right.
coupled with the fact that he had also gone to some of the meditation masters,
Right.
including Ramanuja and
Allar-
Alakasama.
Allarakalam.
Alakalam.
Allarakalam.
So the jhanas were already there,
Right.
which meant that sati was already well known as an aspect because without practicing sati, it's not possible for someone to reach the first jhana. That you had to keep remembering to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back over
Right.
and over again. So sati is an actual quality of an ingredient in that regard. I would go so far as to say that sati itself, though the Buddha thought it was is so important that he gave it such a high station, he got
Mhm.
that from somebody else. That was not original of the Buddha. There's a lot of this stuff that the Buddha taught that's not original at all. It was already there.
Mm.
And I have suspicion that, in fact, uh, other parts of the Eightfold Noble Path were
Mhm.
there. Certainly,
Right.
morality,
Mhm.
all of the aspects of morality, that was already well known. In fact, one way of looking at it is that the Buddha got his morality from whatever's already was there in the culture. The
Right.
Brahmins had already predefined what morality was, and
Right.
they had various gradations of it.
Right.
Uh, they were also very action oriented in the
Mhm.
sense of um, they had the understanding that one's actions are
Mhm.
very strong, like cutting or chiseling into a stone a line,
Right.
or that verbal action is like drawing a line in the sand. Is can be long lasting. But
Uh,
drawing a line in the water or in the air is like doing it in the mind. In that regard, the Brahmins are thinking that mental action is not as powerful as physical action. But the Buddha was pointing out, oh no, that in
Right.
fact mind is the forerunner, that you're not going to act on things that you haven't already thought sometimes quite a lot about.
Right.
And in fact, the bigger the bad deed, the more likely there was a lot of mental activity going on about it,
Mm-hmm.
like planning how can I get away with it,
Right.
because they already know that it's wrong according to the teachings of morality.
Right.
So when the Buddha put together then the Eightfold Noble Path, he says, oh no, our morality is not going to be the ordinary kind of morality. It's going to be from a noble mind. That
Mm-hmm.
once the mind is pure, or let us say, once you're satisfied, then you're unlikely to go out harming people.
Right.
That is very unlikely for you to get up, go to the store, and start shoplifting if, in fact, you were completely satisfied.
Right.
Right, we're not likely to do that. Okay, so this is what the Buddha means in the Eightfold Noble Path. Morality had already been there, but it
Mm-hmm.
was all there's two layers of it. One is just the rules themselves,
Right.
and then the other is what we call a consciousness now, or conscience. Like
Mm-hmm.
let your conscience be your guide means now that you've got the rules, you got to follow the rules.
Right.
All right. But this third level is, oh no, you've got to learn to make up the rules on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
Or, in fact, let's not make up any rules. Instead, let's just have a mind that's fit, because
Right.
then our natural living
Right.
is high morality enough all by itself.
Right.
Okay. So this is what he means by the noble path. But other aspects of the path had all already been known. He was a scavenger in a way. He picked up all kinds of stuff
Mm-hmm.
and he put it together into this package that can be practiced in a way that does lead to the liberation that everybody was looking for. That
Yeah.
moksha is a common word still in Hindi, and it was common. He just picked it up. It was just, just another word
Mm-hmm.
that he used, just like freedom had been in English language long before Buddhism came by. So we all know what that means, freedom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, here's the difference between, say, a child's freedom and an adult's freedom is the child, it wants to have the freedom to go do what he wants to do. This is
Mm-hmm.
the lower kind of freedom. But the higher kind of freedom is freedom from doing the things that I want to do,
Mm.
or freedom from the things that I used to want to do that when I did them would get me in trouble. And now, so I'm
Right.
free from all of that. And so this is the real freedom that comes with deep knowledge. And so
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning of practice, every student practices an eightfold path, whether it's Buddhism or any religion. But
Mm.
within the context of the Buddha, it's when we finally figure out what we really need to do, is when our own view becomes noble. And that right noble view comes first, and with that comes all of the other. That's when our sati becomes noble.
Right.
That before it was just darn good sati. But now that we've taken that noble step, now the sati becomes noble, because now it's got the real quality to it. And that real extra quality that we're looking for is now we're not looking to do the right thing anymore. Now we're looking for dukkha and dukkha nirodha.
Right.
We're looking for how to see suffering in this moment as it comes and how to merely step out of its way.
Right.
So, right sati is waking up to see it with right view, and then one's right effort to stand around just step out of its way and let it pass. Now,
Right.
most Buddhists in the beginning, when they understand that, they want to stand in the middle of the road and put their arm out like Popeye and try to stop the truck.
Right.
That's one's wrong effort. Don't try to stop it, but rather just merely step out of the way.
Right.
And so this is what we're going to start practicing is first off is getting in touch with why did I get up? What's going on here? Okay. And pretty soon you'll get to the point of seeing why it was that you got up or wanted to get up, but you didn't get up because you were so interested in saying, that's right, I don't have to go get a Coke now or go see the Tiwala. I'm okay. Or
Okay.
whatever
Yeah.
it is just beginning to think about what's going on in the mind in this moment. So that gives us an opportunity to wake up even more and more and more. And so this becomes one's practice, is the dedication to wake up and wake up as often as we can using as many tools as we can. Another example, and we can talk about this at a later time, but another example would be whenever you're around people. And now that coronavirus is around, it's even more important to wake up when you're around other people. But
Yeah.
you could take a coronavirus as just another example of being around other people is dangerous. That people
Right.
more than likely are going to start feeling bad when they're around someone else. They can get jealous, they can get envious, they can get angry, they can get all, depends upon what's happening in the moment. But when we're in seclusion, we're pretty good to go. The only
Right.
crap we have to deal with then is the crap in our own mind. But when we're out there dealing with other people, now it's really dangerous.
Yeah.
They could have, instead of coronavirus number 19, they could have bad attitude number 19, and that's just as dangerous. And so that's one of those times that we really need sati. It's time to wake up. When other
Yeah.
people are angry, let's not get angry. Let's wake
Right.
up to that. Let's not lose our satisfaction just because the people around us have lost theirs.
Right.
And so this is another kind of practice to get into. And soon we find that there's all kinds of opportunities
Right.
for practice. So this sitting down and standing up, that's your first actual, you could call it an assignment. But
Right.
all of the other stuff is kind of for you to begin to wake up to on your own. So that there's all kinds of reasons to stay focused on sati as often as you can. You could go
Right.
so far as to say that when one is breathing intentionally, that we need sati at the beginning of the in breath and sati at the beginning of the out breath. So is that regular? We want to start bringing it up that much to start really paying attention to the breathing throughout the day. And this is a way to get started on it, is taking the bulk of the work out of the sitting meditation and now putting it into these few anchors or triggers that I've pointed out.
Right.
This will really help wake up. Be sure to take those deep breaths whenever you sit down. That's an important part.
Right.
One of the ways that I described it today to another student is it's like a cake. To bake a cake needs several ingredients.
Right.
Right? Okay. You need liquid and water, or fat like milk, or ghee or butter or whatever. You need flour. You need an egg and sugar. So
Right.
those are 5 ingredients. If we left out 2 of them, whichever 2 we left out, would it be a cake?
No.
No. It takes all of those ingredients to define it as a cake, and the proof of that is in the eating of it.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if they left the flour out, there's not going to be much cake there. Or if they left the sweetness out, then
Yeah.
then one of the qualities of a cake is that it's sweet. So leaving the
Yeah.
sugar out, okay. This is what happens often with meditation. is that we leave out some of the key ingredients. And I mentioned 5 for the cake because the first jhana, in fact, has 5 ingredients. And one samadhi is to be able to collect and put together into the cake these 5 ingredients so that now we got something worth cooking. And so that sweetness has to do with the joy or the gladdening of the mind. And so this is why that's so important in this teaching. And yet, I don't know about much of India, but Goenka doesn't make much of a deal out of it, and it's certainly not in Western Buddhism as it's taught. And yet it's actually a key ingredient to gladden the mind, to put the sweetness in there, to build joy.
Not even in Mahasi. Mahasi also doesn't emphasize this.
And so I'm wanting to re-emphasize that these ingredients are really important to put in the mix. So every time that you sit down in the chair, take delight in it.
Right.
Take great delight. This is so nice.
Right.
That's an important quality of it. And also the breathing. That's something that Mahasi talks about, but the way that it winds up getting transmitted is that they don't pay much attention to how you're breathing, but they give a hint in the sense of rising and falling. Well, most people, the way they breathe, there's not much rising and falling. If you're actually doing some rising and falling, then you're probably breathing correctly. And yet Goenka doesn't talk about it much at all.
Yeah.
And so deep breathing is a really important quality. And that deep breathing was also known before the time of the Buddha. And I think that that's part of the reason why he picked out Anapanasati as his preferred method. And that deep breathing is the first step of Anapanasati. That's the first item on the list. And yet so many people miss that. It's like the list of ingredients of a cake, and flour is the first item on the list, and now they're working trying to get the other factors together. They forget about the flour completely.
Yeah.
And so making sure that you've got these 2 things, these 2 qualities as part of your practice, because these 2 things are not emphasized well with the Goenka method, but they are so vitally important. That these are the factors of the path that the Buddha has laid down, and that breathing, that first step. If we can't get the frontal cortex oxygenated, then we're not going to be able to think as well. An example of that, I would say, is you could think of the frontal cortex as like a huge supercomputer, a Cray or a big IBM or something like that, to where the reptilian brain is much more like a laptop with a little Intel processor that can be run off a battery. And so when we're breathing well, that means that we've got the fire, we've got the blood, we've got the oxygen, and we've got the food and the blood ready to put this frontal cortex into gear and get it running. And so that's part of the practice of Anapanasati that a lot of people miss out on, is that we've got to get that breathing going. And when that breathing is good and the joy is building up, now we've got to practice. Now we've got something that's worthwhile doing, and getting all of these factors together. And so you can do that now and practice doing it, what we're talking about now, just by sitting down. Just by sitting down, taking a deep breath, gladdening the mind, putting yourself into a state of satisfaction. And you keep practicing that 30, 40, 50 times a day, you're sure to start making real good, fast progress.
So it doesn't matter if I practice that with the reminders of the alarms, or whether
you can add an alarm too. Yes.
It doesn't matter. So if I'm reminded by myself or the alarm.
whatever that you want to use as an anchor.
Right.
And one way of doing it, if you're in a forest, is every time a bird sings.
Right.
I just heard another one.
Right. So
So
I could change it to every time I hear because there's a city. It's a very dense city. I don't find much of birds here, so I can think of it as every time I hear a vehicle horn or make a noise.
okay,
Then I could
how about every time you see a beggar? That you can
sorry. Could
give,
you?
yeah, you can give a rupee every
Could,
time you see a
you
beggar.
oh, right.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Right,
I've been there, yeah. So that's another opportunity. Sure, carry some rupees around and
right.
start becoming generous. That in fact,
Hmm.
Willie, that's part of his assignment from about a year ago. And so he started off with a quarter, but now he works with dollars, and sometimes he even goes and buys stuff. In New York everything's expensive, and so just recently this woman that he knew that was out there, he went intentionally and bought a donut and coffee for her, and then came and gave it to her because he knew she'd be in the subway.
Oh,
Okay, so this is the practice of generosity, and he says literally it has really changed his family life a lot.
okay.
It's really opened up to becoming more generous. So now that you mentioned Bangalore, let's add an item to that list.
Right, right.
And so whenever you give them a rupee, make sure that it's not just dropping it as you pass by because you're better than they. Always get their attention so that they can see who you are and smile at them and give it to
Okay.
them. Because you're
Right.
going to be seeing some of the same beggars over and over and over again, and you're going to wind up becoming the town hero. It's amazing how this works.
Right.
And there are many Sat gurus in India who talk about this and practice it themselves, because India's got enough beggars. In America, especially places like New York, they've got enough homeless that
Uh-huh.
people they need help. And it
Right.
will give you great joy to
Hmm.
start helping people.
Right.
A
Right.
rupee's not much. That's what.
Right. The intention, the volition is again.
Yes, volition, intention, exactly. And so that's another item that you can add to the list. So every time you sit down, every time you pass a beggar, every time you stand up, every time you go through a door, and every time you do whatever you want to do with your cell phone.
Right.
And now you're beginning to build a short list of things that are really going to help wake you up.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. Are you willing to accept this kind of an assignment?
Oh, of course.
Oh, of course, yeah. You're looking forward to it. That's excellent. All right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you check in soon and tell me all about it.
Sure. I would.
Because these are just beginning practices. Next
Right.
week, when you call in to talk about it, will be different than 4 or 5 months from now after you're really getting into these practices.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Okay? All right. Well, Gautama, we will see you.
See you. Thank you so
Gautama.
much.
Gautama.
Bye.